But you know, I just, what happened here is, I mean, this is where years of psychotherapy can happen very quickly. Not if you haven't done work before. The only reason that this was available is because you have, and you saw through your own story. It's beautiful, because this is what I love about this exploration and inquiry. We went through a cycle, and all these questions were kind of answered sort of prior to the words. You experience the innocence, and then you experience the contraction, and you return to the innocence. And it didn't require all of this time and process. It happened within a minute. And the only thing that it required you to do was to open and feel, which is the complete MO, the complete use of the ego, is to prevent us from being open and feel that innocence of a child looking. See, this is what I mean when I've shared with people that there was a time in my journey when my sitting practice became a crying practice. This is what I'm talking about. It was just the raw energy came out, up in me. And that's why at a certain point on the journey, awakening journey, we can bypass this, and a lot of the non-dual direct path approaches are completely bypassing it. It's all story, so just drop it. And you can drop it. That's the beauty. You can wake up now. You don't need to change anything. But to embody, to stabilize, you can't run away from anything. This is what's going to trip you up all the time. And you don't need, nobody needs to do anything. but what I often share is, if that's what you want, if you want truth, and if you want this to be an abiding experience, you're serious about that, not just lip service, you got to become intimate with your emotional experience, your deep psyche at a certain point. And bring that helplessness into it, and recognize that the most powerful transmutation and healing is not analyzing at all. The quicker you can just drop to that space and feel, and every time you do, it's so raw, it's so helpless. But that's it. And I hear this all the time. You know, I recently was exploring with somebody, and they had had many great realizations, very deep level. And then we, of course, hit one of these pockets. It's beautiful, you know. And then what tends to happen, and it happened for you too in a different way, but you caught yourself. It was beautiful. Is they went into the mind, basically trying to wow me with their understanding and their clarity of the teachings, and I saw right through it. It's like, whatever. And like you brought up the psychological story. You didn't get lost in it. But this is how simple it gets at a certain point. It's just like, all of that is just child's play. For liberation, you can't be free and hold on to anything. You can't be in control. That's what living in the unknown and surrender is. It means your experience is just what it is. If it's raw and it's painful, then it's raw and it's painful. That's the reality. That's truth. And what do you want in that moment? Do you want a different experience or not? It will transmute and transform. This is the thing about experience. It fluxes. It always will, forever. No experience is meant to last forever. But to bring that, this is where I often say the gut is about intensity. So it's the super blissful and the super painful. And because it's the gut, it's linked into that existential fear and terror of not knowing anything and ultimately not knowing who we are. I often share that the gut realization is the realization I am not. The heart is I am everything. The head, awakened head, mind is I'm nothing. Nothing more in witness value. But the gut is just, it's beyond consciousness even. It's completely beyond experience. So you don't know who you are anymore. And that last stick of that self will grab at anything. You'll grab at the terror. At least I know who I am if I'm terrified. At least I know who I am if I'm a victim. Or at least I'll know who I am if I'm like blissful, loving, drunk on emptiness dude. But the simplicity and the growing up that we're speaking about is just this. Everything is this. And not as a concept. The power of this is how your experience can shift. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to go up into the mind again. I mean, we're human beings and we're adults. We have to use the mind. This is the world we live in. But the moment we catch ourselves kind of the body contracting, that's the invitation. Oh, what's going on here? What's happening? And initially we need to sort of become familiar in our intrapsychic process. It becomes more about a way to stay awake, to stay open. And the more we gain a momentum in that, then it's eventually going to start to walk and talk and relate. And it doesn't need your experience to be perfect. You can actually function and manifest clarity and awake true action in the midst of feeling helpless and wobbly. But you see, that's the trick. It's the both end. The fear can be right here. I mean, as we wake up, we want to transcend the fear. We want to transcend body-mind completely. But there's a space, there's a distance. But eventually we'll bump into what I call the limitation of transcendence. Meaning, this is the edge that we play with. We transcend, we go to the witness, and then we go into the emotion and get caught. And it's something, you can tell a person this 1,000 million times, and it won't drop, like really, a person won't grok it. But it's just when you're faced with that contraction, it's so unconsciously ingrained in us to run away from it. Even though we can know in the mind, when we drop directly in the emotion of it, it's just, it's such an ingrained process to self-protect. The attachment aversion mechanism right at the base. It's just, no, I don't want pain, I want pleasure. I want what feels good. And it has to be one or the other. The mind, the self, the ego, it can't understand paradox this way. It can't understand that there can be freedom in the midst of fear. You can fully feel and be free. What are you free to do? To feel fear. What are you free to do? To feel sadness. And beauty and love and the entire spectrum. But you're not locking and blocking your awakening process, that it's always about chasing some other state.